Our neuroscience-based approach and the training we offer really helps sharpen manager skills so they can detect and understand that manipulative behavior. If you're a young and a new manager and you have a more mature employee who has these very entrenched learned behaviors, you need to understand how that works.
Let me give you 3 things you want to look for. For those who's like, okay, can you give me 3 points?
Welcome to MetaGagement, the HR show that dives deep into the heart of employee engagement and workplace culture. Your hosts, Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery, bring you a groundbreaking show that explores innovative strategies and insights to transform and elevate your organization's HR practices. Dr. Montgomery is an employee engagement expert and best-selling author, while Ann Scottlin is an acclaimed business consultant and podcaster. Together, they will unpack the complexities of modern HR challenges and reveal innovative solutions that can be immediately applied to your workplace. Please welcome Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery.
Hello and welcome back to your show, MetaGagement-HR, where we are making the possible probable for HR managers, HR professionals, and anyone in the company who works with the team, who works in leadership, understanding how you can take it to the next level. We use neuroscience. We're always digging through new and continuous innovation to find ways to make these things work and have more fun getting the work done. So if you could do the work but do it more easily, wouldn't you want to do that? My name is Ann Scottlin and my co-host here. Hello, Dr. Lyman Montgomery.
Hello, glad to be with you again.
Yay! We had so much fun in our last series, and I'm really excited today because we're introducing a new series, which is called Dealing with Toxic Employees.
Woo!
Now, we're not just targeting employees, right?
No. After this year, we're also going to be dealing with managers and supervisors. The whole notion of toxicity in the workplace. We talked about toxic environments in the previous episode. This series is dedicated to toxic employees, but don't worry, we're also going to deal with toxic supervisors in the next series.
Excellent. Amazing. And as always, it is our goal to help you foster resilience and adaptability in whatever department you are working, and especially if you are in HR. We do an extra deep dive here for HR professionals. If you're new to MetaGagement-HR, please like and subscribe. We'd love to see you here again. And if you have fun with us today, copy and paste this link and shoot it to someone else who might enjoy it. We would really appreciate that. It helps us keep this content coming to you. So as Lyman said, in today's episode, we're going to take this deep dive into the world of workplace toxicity. Specifically, we're going to unveil those telltale signs of harmful behavior and share real life scenarios and really help you realize how you can use neuroscience-backed strategies, not just to survive, but to really thrive, as we said, in that environment. So take your workplace back from toxic employees and transform your team, make it more dynamic. We're going to jump in here right away. And well, the title of this episode is Spotting Office Energy Vampires. I couldn't resist, Lyman.
I love it.
And a lot of that is these hidden behaviors, right? It's what you're not expecting from toxic employees that is often the worst problem. What are some of these behaviors? How do we recognize them, and what do they look like? Some are obvious, some not so much.
Yeah, sometimes when you're dealing with a toxic, I love that the title of vampire. You ever notice that nobody knows Count Dracula is a vampire until at night, right? Because during the day, he's in a coffin. You don't see him. He invites you to dinner. Everything is well until you go to sleep, and all of a sudden he appears trying to suck blood out of you. Well, the same is with a toxic employee. The toxicity doesn't show up during the interview. This person will smile. This person will be chilled. This person will come across as a team player, but the sign of their toxicity is when they're faced with a stressful situation and how they navigate that situation will reveal their toxicity when it comes to how they deal with other people. As long as everything is great, no problem. But as soon as there is a crisis, all of a sudden they will switch on you. And instead of being a friend, they now become a foe in the workplace.
Exactly. And that's what I was just going to say. That was the perfect transition from a friend to a foe. One of the most obvious experiences that I've had is with office energy vampires is really seeing passive aggressive behavior.
Yes.
So as you said, smiled in the interview, very friendly, always kind of often that cool person even, but becomes very self-serving and truculent and unkind when the tables are not in their favor, or when someone's pointing to them to explain a mistake, all of a sudden they get very, very different.
Yeah. Let me give you 3 things you want to look for. For those who's like, okay, can you give me 3 points? Here's your 3 points. Number 1, they are oftentimes very difficult to self-reflect on their own mistakes. What do I mean by that? When they make a mistake, they blame others. They don't take responsibility nor accountability for their own mistake. It wasn't me. If I had the right teammates, if John would have done his part. So they don't take accountability. Number 2, they're always looking for the path of least resistance. In other words, when something is challenging, they're the ones that say, well, why we got to do it that way? Why can't we just do it this way? And the third one, they make excuses for everything. So number 1, they lack taking responsibility or accountability. They seek the least path of resistance. And the third thing that's perhaps the most critical is they make excuses why things don't get done.
This is the exact opposite of your employee who regularly goes the extra mile.
Yes.
So this is someone who is in it really for themselves and only for themselves. They're only nice to people when there's something in it for them. They only kiss up when there's something in it for them. But they will just as quickly throw you under the bus if someone blames them for a mistake. So identifying some of these things is absolutely key to really fostering a more resilient and adaptable team. So some of the solutions we talk about here at MetaGagement, as we talk, always bringing in continuous innovation, neuroscience, we're always looking for insights to help you understand employee behavior better. So here's an example for Lyman. So what if I have an employee who consistently spreads negativity in meetings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you have that person that's consistently spreading negativity, either in the way that they come across, I always say, they're curt rather than being courteous. Maybe their body language is very closed. They might use a tone that is offensive. When these sort of things happen, sometimes you have microaggressions that take place you really can't identify, but you know it when you feel it, because you don't always see it. But it's like, wow, that kind of stung the way he or she said it. One of the things that I tell people to do, make the distinction between, is this a one-off or is this becoming a pattern? All of us have bad days. All of us have days where we're not as nice or as kind as we should be. But when this becomes a pattern of behavior, that's a great indication that something else is going on. Another thing that you can do that I have used is trying to figure out the why. Why is this person feeling this way? Did something happen? Is there an offense that this person feels that has not been reconciled? Often when you talk with the person, say, hey, you came across, a bit harsh there. What's going on? And say, you know what, I'm sorry. If it's not a pattern, they will oftentimes take accountability and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this. If they start making excuses, if they start blaming others, if they start looking for the least path of resistance, well, This place is a power keg. Nothing ever goes right. John is an idiot. I don't know why they put me on this team. I'm doing all the work. Then you know that it's that person and not necessarily a one-off. That this has become a pattern of behavior.
And because the same words can be used differently by different people, right? Like there's that person who can sit, and I think this is a good time for an example here, where there's a person who you've been in that meeting or on that board where the person is always, everybody who makes a suggestion, they're like, yeah, that won't work. Yep, that won't work. That won't work. Like they just keep saying this. And my question in my mind is, do they not? Clearly, they don't feel heard. Clearly, they probably really have something that they're dying to say, and no one has given them a space to come in and say it. So I would probably take it like, let's test the waters here. Is this a toxic person, or is this just an individual situation? Would you like to share? Tell us your 3 suggestions, as you're always saying. What are your 3 suggestions for solving this problem? Because then you find out there's occasionally a group of people who will also say, or a person who will say, often in leadership, actually, which is more for another time, but will say, yeah, that won't work.
Or we've tried
that has business intuition that knows that is 90% true, right? And if they say, no, that isn't going to work, then you're like, can you explain to us why? Can you explain to us, is that something from your past that you've learned? No matter who they are. And maybe they have a very, very valid reason for that, and they can articulate that, which is totally different from someone just saying, it's all bullshit. I don't know why you guys are even trying to, this is a completely useless waste of our time. I don't even know why we have to sit here. This is so stupid. It won't work. Because that brings everyone down. You have a couple people who show up, they're real chipper and happy. They had a good morning, they got their coffee, and then you got a couple real downers.
Not vampire and come out with his or her veins and just suck the life force out of
and by the time you leave, 20 minutes later, everyone's just like,
they're like little zombies, right?
No, it's so true. And I think, one of the things we often talk about here at MetaGagement is really helping the team as a whole, because then you're not targeting, right? Reflect on how that toxic behavior impacts the team's morale, the team's productivity. So when we can find some real-time feedback tools during meetings to really highlight and address negative behavior right away, if we can lay this out before negative behavior even happens and say, hey guys, guess what? We all have bad days. We all have negative behavior. Today, everyone's in a great mood. We're having cake. It's someone's birthday. But here's what's going to happen going forward in meetings. Here's our little system, 3-point system of identifying whether someone, we're having a toxic conversation, start there, right? Or whether it's actually productive conversation. And come with up one of our tools or another tool that makes it fun and interesting and engaging. This tool is also going to unveil whether it's a person who is being repetitively toxic, or whether it's just, we're taking a toxic turn, but we're going to pop back out, right? But when you set those expectations, and that's not something that we even had on the line to talk about today, but I think expectations for how toxicity is going to be handled is critical. Because when there is already a system in place from the top, from HR, and your team as a whole, this is how we're going to handle any kind of negativity that is, more than a once or, occasional occurrence. People are like, okay, well, I guess I know what's going to happen if I keep going down this track. I'm going to get called on it. But it's not that they're pulling it. They're not singling you out because they don't like you. They've already said in advance, this is how we're going to discuss and handle a negative behavior that crops up and becomes chronic, right?
Think of a boil or something that's on your hand that is, or toxin that has crept into your body, either through eating something, drinking something, or maybe you got stung by some critter or even bitten. And all of a sudden you notice that you have like an irritation, right? And that irritation goes on, and now you have this bump or this blister or something. And if you go to a doctor, oftentimes what they have to do is they have to drain the poisons out of that particular area. And the same thing with a toxic individual is that if you don't get a handle on that individual, that poison, that toxicity will spread throughout the entire team and the organization. And you have to be willing to say, okay, let's address the issue and when I talk about lancing or opening up that wound, to your point, giving the person space to talk, okay, John, Sally, Tim, I want to hear what you have to say. Tell me all of the frustrations. That's opening up that lens, allowing that poison to drain out. But you don't just let it drain. You also have to add an antibiotic. Now, the antibiotic is like, okay, I understand you feel this way. Here are 3 suggestions or recommendations. Are you willing to apply this? And if they say yes, great. It's putting a bandage on it, allowing it to heal, understands the process. If they are resistant to treatment, you need to get rid of that person as soon as possible. Because if you don't, you run the risk of poisoning the entire organization with their negativity, toxicity. And it's just like the vampire. Remember, the vampire doesn't kill everybody. Sometimes the goal of the vampire is to create other little vampires.
Oh, and those are the most dangerous, the breeding ground of vampires, right?
Yeah.
But I do want to draw our attention to the fact that, as we're kind of going on in this conversation, we were kind of transitioning from, identifying signs of toxic behavior in group settings. But this kind of corrective feedback, a lot of times that can be done in a private setting. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be. Right. I've seen it done, but it's usually considered done badly when it's done in public. You've seen a person fired from a meeting right in front of everyone. And, I'm not saying it can never happen, but it can usually be handled better. And so just knowing when to say, what if you just can't make any headway in this meeting because of this person? You're like, what? I think I need to do a little more. We're going to do some more research on this topic, and we're going to reconvene in 3 hours or tomorrow morning. And we're going to have part 2 of this meeting because I just don't feel like we're getting anywhere. We're not making any real productive decisions. So let's come back to it. Well, now you've given yourself time to meet with that person one-on-one to kind of sort out what's really going on and get behind it before it becomes, like you said, the breeding ground of little vampires. I can see them now. It's like so funny. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about an example. What if you have a high performer who is also a manipulative employee? What do we do at that point? So we're going to talk about that right after the commercial break. While we are taking that break, please do subscribe, shoot us a question or comment. And as always, copy and paste this link and shoot it to someone you like who might have fun listening to this, could learn something, and would like to hang out with us for a bit today. We appreciate you being here, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Are you feeling overwhelmed in your HR role? Discover MetaGagement, the forward-thinking solution that goes beyond traditional methods. Our personalized coaching services provide tailored support to help you enhance your professional and personal development. With our focused meta mindset system, you'll sustain motivation and achieve your goals. Experience the transformative power of our engaging events and webinars. Connect, learn, and grow with industry leaders and motivated individuals. MetaGage your organization today. Visit metagagement.com and start your journey.
Hi, welcome back to MetaGagement-HR, the show that is for you. We are in the second part of our episode today in our episode title, Spotting Office Energy Vampires. Lyman, we are having a good time talking about how vampires can breed little baby vampires if we're not careful. How do we identify toxic employees? How do we recognize manipulative tactics despite high performance? And that really takes us back to the scenario. What if you have a high performer, but they're a very manipulative employee? How can we start handling that?
Yeah, it's sort of like that fine line between do we keep the high performer because it's almost like an episode of The Sopranos where they wanted to take out someone like that, but yeah, he's a high earner. Yeah, but
Yeah.
he's a horrible person. Yeah, but he's a high earner. Sometimes businesses will overlook these microaggressions, this toxic behavior, because the person is a high performer. And what needs to happen is, just because you are a high performer does not give you a license to spread your toxicity throughout the organization. Because trust me, if you allow that high performer, because he or she or they are bringing in, let's say, significant amount of dollars, but at what expense? At some point, you're going to lose contracts because of this individual. And what I recommend is 3 things you do with that high performer that is revealing these manipulative tactics. Number 1, you need to be very clear and say, listen, I understand that you are a high value, high performer. However, our policies are very clear. And if you're unable to adhere to our policies, then maybe this is not the place for you. So when you let that high performer know that you're willing to forgo them to save the organization, generally they say, you know what, yeah, I'm kind of tripping here. But as long as they believe that, well, you know what, without me, you won't hit your sales goal. Without me, now they become somewhat narcissistic in believing that they are, quote, the savior of the organization. The second thing is you need to set a metrics of saying, listen, what is it about this particular situation that you feel you have to use these tactics? Can you do it a different way? Let me suggest an alternative way to get to the same result. Maybe they're using tactics that they learned from their mentor, from their supervisor. Because a lot of times these manipulative tactics are learned behaviors, and they don't know an alternative or different path to get there. And it's our job to show them a different path to get there without sacrificing quality or sacrificing efficiency. The third, I would say, is this. You need to be very, very clear that this behavior is unacceptable. As long as he, she, or they believe that this behavior is tolerated, they will continue to perform in the same way.
It's interesting, right? Because if you, if you don't address it, I like what you were saying earlier about even if they're the high performer, a lot of times these people can become very passive aggressive towards management because they feel like they have the right to control management, to control how their own behavior is handled. But the high performer, I would liken that to, a high performing muscle in the body. Right. Let's not use the heart. Let's use like the quads or another major muscle group. Right. That is for most people really essential to walk, to move. But if that particular muscle is diseased, and if that disease may transfer to the rest of the body and even cause death, what are you going to do? There are some people who have prosthetics for a reason because of disease, because you're like, to save the whole body, we may have to remove this. You are a high performer, but you are not the whole organism. The high performer doesn't get to govern the life or death of the whole organism. So it is vital to really get in there, do the digging, analyze it, and then see what can be done. Can it be cured, or does it need to be removed? Right. And it's basically one way of doing it. And our neuroscience-based approach and the training we offer really helps sharpen manager skills so they can detect and understand that manipulative behavior. If you're a young and a new manager and you have a more mature employee who has these very entrenched learned behaviors, you need to understand how that works. So the first one you encounter isn't a huge surprise. It's going to really help you get to the next level without a crisis. Okay, so and then next, balancing performance with behavioral expectations. I think you already touched on that, which is
Yeah.
yes, you may be a high performer, but you also have to behave like one. With what is it? With responsibility comes no, with privilege comes responsibility. I don't know. Anyway, there's several phrases like that, right? Where
Yeah.
yeah, you get the benefits and the perks, but with that also comes an additional level of responsibility, not only for how you affect the company, but if you're a high performer and you have that kind of role, you should be a leader amongst your peers and amongst those who are coming in beneath you. You should be setting an example of
Yeah.
behavior
Yeah.
because they're going to learn from you regardless. You know why? Because they want to be you. They want to be a high performer. So what kind, as in management or, as in HR, what kind of behavior are you willing to tolerate this person because they're setting the trend for the people who would like to be them. So it can be very it can be very sort of, you have to catch it. It can be very elusive sometimes, right?
And this is the problem sometimes. There's an old adage that say we should be celebrated, not simply tolerated. And too often, high performers, and I've seen this in many organizations, where we tolerate the behavior at the expense of others not being celebrated. And the truth of the matter is, all of us should be celebrated, not simply tolerated, because we have a high skills, well, oftentimes it's in sales, but we tend to put a lot of emphasis on sales. They're the top earners. It's like the Pareto rule, right? 20% of the sales force brings in 80% of the revenue. Okay. Well, guess what? If you are a high performer, but you are also a high toxic personality, I will take a low performer that's eager to learn and get them to becoming a high performer than simply to tolerate the high performer with high toxicity. And I'd rather celebrate a low to medium performer that's at least willing to learn, and maybe they don't have the skills or the experience, and invest in that person to get them to become a high performer. And at least they have an appreciation for it, and they're not narcissistic and thinking that they are the quote savior of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we also have to, especially from an HR perspective, right? We really need to make sure that we're documenting instances of manipulation, that we're tracking using documentation tools, track
Yes.
instances of manipulative behavior, making sure we have accurate records. It doesn't have to be absolutely comprehensive, but you can't ignore it, because you need to track the pattern. If there comes a point at which that person needs to be let go, you have to have fair reasons to demonstrate why, right? Or if they challenge you, every now and then, everyone goes through a bad spell in life, right? And maybe they just become extraordinarily difficult. And if you confront them with the data and you say, look, these are my notes, sometimes they'll actually be like, I am so sorry. I had no idea I was doing this repetitively. I love this company. I realize I'm going out on a limb here to ask you to give me a chance. And that's the management's discretion, right? But if a person, sometimes they just don't know. Sometimes they're just operating from a survival mechanism. But if they're not, and if they're unwilling to change, then at least you have documented what you need to adapt for going
There's an
forward.
old saying in HR: if it ain't written, it didn't happen. And so documentation
Exactly.
is your friend. And accurately documenting, making sure that the date, the time, the place, who was involved, what was the outcome. Because sometimes, and I've seen this happen as well, and where we confuse confidence for arrogance. And so a person might be highly confident because of their competence, but that's not arrogance, okay?
No.
If a person says, I know I'm great at sales, that's not arrogance, and they have the receipts to prove it, that's a level of confidence that I want to see based on their competence of producing the results that we've asked them to give. Where it becomes a problem, and you outlined it perfectly, is when they are engaging in these manipulative tactics, these gimmicks, where they're lying, where they're, maybe their sales is based on a house of cards, where they've made promises that the organization cannot deliver. Maybe they're getting the sale because they're saying, oh, sure, you know what? This has a 100% money back guarantee. If you buy it and let's say in 3 days you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. And so going back to tracking and say, wait a minute, let's look at these sales. Are these real sales numbers based in what was promised, or did we overpromise and we cannot deliver? Oftentimes I've seen people where they will, just to get the sale, they will engage in unethical practices. And when you look at the number of chargebacks, they say, well, it ain't my fault. That's marketing. Listen, that's fulfillment's problem. I got the sale. Now, if y'all didn't live up to your end, that's not on me. Give me my commission. I earned it. I got the sale. So again, you want to do your due diligence.
Absolutely. And I want to wrap up this episode today. We've been talking about spotting office energy vampires in our series. It's part 1, dealing with toxic employees. And yes, we will have another series about other toxic people and how we can work with that in the company. But to your last point, Lyman, so documenting instances of manipulation for future reference, keeping track. My bonus point for that today would be, don't let your office be breeding those other small band of new vampires. When you're documenting, make a point to document several people who are doing well and who said exceptionally good things and who made especially good presentations, who were especially authentic and great with a client. Like, it's going to make your performance reviews so much easier, and to have those specific things. And when you want to give awards, when you want to provide incentives, this is the thing to do. So documenting takes time. It doesn't have to be extensive. Obviously, when it's a negative issue, you do have to kind of cross all the T's and check all the boxes. But also make sure for every negative one, document a few good ones, because those are the ones that are going to become your area of focus. The negative one eventually is either going to leave or be asked to leave, and you're going to be still working with everyone else. So don't give all the bad kid all your attention.
That is so important. I said this in one of our previous episodes, is I asked a question to a group of HR, about 100 some HR professionals that I was speaking to. And I said, by show of hands, how many of you know all the bad apples, bad performance in the organization? Every hand went up. I said, how many of you know the names of your top performers? No hands went up. And that just showed, again, we focus so much on our problem that we're not celebrating those individuals that they show up, they do what we've asked them to do, and we don't even know their names a lot of times.
Incredible, really. Well, this has been great. I hope all of you have enjoyed watching or listening to us today here on MetaGagement-HR. Thanks for joining. We're always streaming here on whatever platform you're on today. That's Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. GMT. So join us every time. You can go to the notes here and click on our playlist and check out previous episodes that I think you will also love. And shoot us your comments and thoughts in the platform, or you can just go directly to our website and email us from there at metagagementhr.com. And we look forward to having you next time. We're going to do part 2 of this series, which is dealing with toxic employees. Don't be one. Have an amazing day. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Goodbye.